If you're on the board, everybody, there you go, board members there. Thank you, guys. Do we have any first-time visitors here? Any first-time visitors? Thank you for coming, and please come back again. We want to recognize Market Street Cafe, Mary Ellen and her daughter back there, and the little granddaughters back there. All serving some great food. If you like this food, make sure you go to the restaurant and taste the whole menu. We want to recognize Janetta with Janetta Beef Photography Productions. Does our videos every month, and sometime fairly shortly after this speech, she'll have everything up on the website, so you can go back. Not only view this one, but if you've missed a few in the past, you can go back and look at a lot of our past speakers. We have these luncheons the second Tuesday of every month for the most part. We did have a little change. The cost for the meals has increased a little bit. Some of our paperwork might still say 10. The cost is about 15, so if you can manage to put a little extra in the donation, we appreciate it. But from going forward, all the costs will be approximately $15. The bowls are on the table. There's also a QR code you can scan. We also have our sponsorships available. The monthly sponsorship is $150 for the luncheon. Some of our future speakers in July, we're going to have Colleen Harrington. In August, we're going to have Harold Merkel. September, we're going to have Brenda Pennington. October, we're going to have Mike Mantle. And November, we are very, very excited for our Veterans Day. We are going to have running for Congress, Wesley Hunt, who's running for the local office here, and is a veteran Apache helicopter pilot. So we're going to have Wesley come and speak for our Veterans Day luncheon.
Is that on a special day?
That is, thank you for mentioning it. That will not be on the second Tuesday. The second Tuesday is election day on that day, and we would never get a politician on election days. So we've gone ahead and moved it up, so it's going to be on the first Tuesday in November. In November only, the first Tuesday, right here where it normally is. We are also looking for a volunteer to help with social media outreach. So if that is your forte, if your forte is Facebook and Instagram and all the different social media platforms out there, we are looking for a volunteer to help promote us on social media. And let's see. Looks like Dave has finished eating, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Our speaker is the owner and operator of Deep Roots Vineyard and Dance Hall, right up the road here. Dave McGodder and I had the pleasure of hearing Dean speak a few months ago at a Rotary meeting, and immediately thought we needed him for this luncheon. Dean's story and his commitment to his faith is a prime example of why we are all here at the Christian Business Luncheon. Dean, it's all you.
Yeah. How's everybody doing today? I am honored to be here, and you might be thinking very quickly what you got yourself in for, but I really do consider myself an absolute mess, and but a testimony that God can use messed up people, because I've done so many things wrong, but when I have done things right, it's because I've been in communion with my Lord and Savior and walking hand in hand with Him. And I wish I could say I do that perfectly all the time, but as all of you know, there's none of us. There was only one that did that right. And that's the reason we give Him all glory and praise for anything that we do. I do want to show you, I'm going to put up a picture here of our venue down the road. Let's see if I can remember the steps. I'm going to be able to do it. Look at this. All right, this is right down the road. I'm going to tell you a little bit about just my career as a backdrop, and then I'm going to get into something more importantly, just how during those times when I had things right, what effects I saw and outcomes came of that. This venue, I'll start kind of current and then go back. We just started this on a childhood friend of mine's grandpa's dairy farm right down the road, about 12 miles from here, where 249 meets 1774. 249 split his grandpa's property. They have about 1,000 acres or so there. And so we came in and redid the barn. That's the old hay barn. And the dairy we're going to clean up and almost have kind of like a living museum in it. Grandpa Earl was very involved in this area in the farming community, and his dairy before he moved it out here to Plantersville was on West Little York, okay? So we've actually got a picture hanging in the barn of Grandpa Earl and his crew driving cattle down West Little York when it was a dirt road, and this was back in the early 40s, the best that they could tell from the pictures. But a lot of history there. Grandpa Earl was on various committees of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo for over 40 years. And he and his buddy were responsible, I don't know exactly when it would have been, but early on, probably early 50s or late 40s, for the very first calf scramble. So I just think if you've ever been to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and I'm sure that all of you have, you've seen the calf scramble and what a big, unique part of that is. And we get to take pride in my buddy's grandpa touting that he was a half creator of that. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning of my career. I went to Navasota High School, where I was a very below average student and a decent baseball player, but had a great love for the FFA, very much involved in the FFA, and I ended up going to Sam Houston State on a partial FFA scholarship. And FFA taught me a lot about leadership, a little bit about speaking too. It was the first time that I'd ever gotten in front of somebody speaking on the political side of FFA. I was a district president, then an area president, and really, really enjoyed the opportunities that organization gave me to grow. At Sam Houston State, I was still a less than mediocre student, and man, was I making a wreck of my life. But then I met this wonderful person named Joy, who I'm still married to. It's been 35 years this year. And yeah, we got married when we were 4. And yeah, but anyway, no, we met, I guess that would have been 83. We met, and if any of you have been married a long time, you know that the hills and valleys come along the way. And one of the things I messed up early on is outside of, when I got out of college in 85, moved to the Dallas area, started working where I was an immediate failure in the printing business, and made a whopping $12,800 in my first year out of college. And I was like, oh my gosh, I made more money working construction between college semesters in Houston when I was working that. But my wife came up there. We got married at that time. Lots of financial pressures, not making an excuse, but we know financial pressure can really play havoc. And I left my wife. And by the grace of God only, she, when I finally realized how drastically wrong I was, I came back and we remarried and have been together 35 years now. So again, grace is a good thing, right? An absolutely great thing, and we need that. So my 3rd year into the printing business, I finally got a breakthrough. And so that started the ability to have more than just rice and beans for supper and put a little beef on the table every now and then. But we came and we had our first child in 93, and we're fortunate that my wife, we elected that we were going to try to have her stay home with the children, and we were so blessed that we were able to do that. And that little printing company now in 96-ish, this thing called the internet started coming in, and it really played havoc on the printing industry. And so I knew I needed to do some other things, but still today I have that printing company, and it's just amazing that that little thing is in a dying industry, but keeps hanging on because some key relationships in the consulting business that I do. And I'm convinced that the only reason that's really survived is because God put on my heart in 1996 to go into vocational ministry. And I had a staff that could run that printing business, and I listened to that nudge, and begrudgingly, because at that point I was making more than I ever had. My little printing business was thriving, and vocational ministry, especially at that time, you did not thrive financially. And so I went in to vocational ministry. It started kind of, bivocationally, then eventually turned full-time. But even during that full-time part, I had a great understanding with my church that I still needed to step into key relationships and keep them strong. But had a great small staff that just also understood my calling and were so supportive of that. So that was in 1996, and this thing I say we call nudges is what as I grew as a young man and got re-engaged with my church as I had a young family and took leadership roles on there, my prayer life really expanded to what I like to say is conversational prayer. I think that's the way God wants it to be. You know, He wants a conversation with us. Are we available, to listen to that conversation through impressions, through whispers, through what I call nudges? Now, if he were here right now, and he is, but if he was going to be audible, he would say, well, Dean, why didn't you listen to me earlier and more and longer? Because many times I've had to thump you on your head instead of whisper to you. And there's been many of those times in my life for sure. But I can also assure you this, we are at our best when we're available to His promptings. When we're not driving this thing down the road by ourselves, taking control of it. And man, I've been so guilty of that countless times in my life where I just want to keep control of the wheel rather than giving it over to Him and trusting those nudges. So down the road, when I was in vocational ministry, my girls got out. They went to Texas A&M, both of my girls. And whoop, there's never fails wherever we're at. There's always a whoop. Who gave the whoop? And I'm surprised there was only one. Larry? All right. But you know what? The reason two reasons I didn't go to A&M. Actually, three. First, we couldn't afford it. Secondly, it was in the path. My mom and dad went to College Station all the time to shop, and I did not want them knocking on my door unannounced at that time. And Huntsville was at least the opposite direction, right? And then thirdly, I just wasn't smart enough, Larry. But luckily, my girls took after my wife, and they had no problem getting into Texas A&M, and we were so blessed to be able to afford that for them. So I digress. But anyway, and I started this. We bought this property when I was still in a vocational ministry, still had my printing business, and we bought it 40 acres out north of Dallas. And I knew that over time, we needed it to be income producing, and eventually. And I didn't know what that meant or what that was going to look like. Let me see if I can get this, show you. This is Barn Hill. I'll let this roll through here. That's from inside the barn, but you'll see I'll just let that roll a little bit. So I was sitting, that's actually me on the keyboards. I do play music too. But I sat up on this hill where the vineyard eventually was, and I prayed over and over and over again when I had an opportunity to get mentored into the wine business. God, can you be glorified in the wine business? Because if you can't, I don't want any part of it. And I can't say that I had the billboard drop down in front of me like I was asking Him for. Dean, build it, they will come. That did not happen. But again, I just tried to be available to His prompting, and over again, the reoccurring nudge and whisper that I got, Dean, right there on that hill is where I sat many nights praying this prayer. And the overcurring nudge was, Dean, whatever you do, magnify me. And so I promised him that I would, and we have, and it's given us a unique platform to speak into people that may have not even seen a church in a long time. An opportunity for this environment, and one of the things we preach is responsible drinking, and very responsible people that are coming out to this venue, but maybe hadn't been to church. We share our faith, our love for our country, our love for the men and women that serve our country, and we do that at Deep Roots too, because we don't know any other way. And it's been received very well, but honestly, it didn't matter. What mattered to me was the commitment that I had made to my Heavenly Father. And He has so walked with me down that road. And so that's a little bit about my career path. We just opened Deep Roots here last Labor Day. And so we do great Texas wine, and the reason I know it's great is because I didn't make it. We work with some of the finest winemakers in the great state of Texas, and we have country music and classic rock, 80s kind of rock, Journey, Genesis, and all the Eagles and stuff like that, that bands that come out from Dallas, Austin, Houston area, and in a very laid-back, responsible atmosphere. So that's a little bit about the career. Now I just want to kind of go into some things that I put a few points together that when I did and when I didn't get it right, when I turned the things that I didn't get right around, it was because of some of these things. And so I ask you, do your customers know about your faith? We have to be relevant in our current culture, right? Jesus didn't necessarily go down the road, and I don't think either should we, waving our Bible in there. Jesus met people in a relationship, all right, which creates a platform for you to pour into them. So we do that on every single time we open the doors, and I think that it should be. There's a line that ever since I've been in ministry for 22 years that I found, and it's amazing to me on the communication that I put out to our Deep Roots and our Barnhill patrons, how something so small can be so significant. And it's just instead of sincerely, I just put because it's true as much as I can make it true, I put in His grip. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back. Again, I don't know any other way, but I'm just telling you, small things make a huge difference. Meeting somebody where they need to be met, and maybe they didn't even know they needed to be met there, but it's prompted conversations with folks that have long strayed from the church. That has given me an opportunity to speak with them. It's given me opportunity to talk to people that just feel like they are not worth God's time. And we know that that is far from true. The prodigal son story tells us that, right? He's available to us anytime we turn back to Him. So make sure your patrons know about your faith and do it in a way that is relevant to our current culture so you establish a relationship with them. We as Christians should look different from what we see in normal society. I grew up thinking being a Christian was absolutely norm, and everybody was in the smallest minority. But wow, hadn't that changed? It blows my mind to know the fabric that this great nation was founded on, and know that yes, we should have religious freedoms and the ability to worship anything that we want. But it blows my mind that we as Christian, because we were part of the founding, we were the key central founding fabric of our great nation, that we get ostracized. Blows my mind. And so we need to, how do we look different? Well, I think, there's several ways we look different, but random acts of kindness, just a smile to a clerk when they're being angry, but you think maybe they're just having a horrible day. We do not know their story. So we need to pass the smell test ourselves. Are we going to bring the fruits of the Spirit to our daily walk? Are we going to take the fruits of the Spirit to Walmart on a busy day when all I want to do is get in there and buy a bag of potatoes because my wife asked me to pick them up and get out of there, but there's 20 people in line, the self-service things are broken down, and there's rude people around. Am I going to look different in that situation? Again, I don't look different sometimes, but when I do get it right, these are the things that I keep trying to remind myself. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Does that sound like any of us 100% of the time? No, my wife could take a few of those words out of there sometimes with me, for sure. Patience is very difficult for me. It is very, very difficult. But we need to pass that smell test because we want them to see something in us that they want more of. Before they even know your name, we should look different. There should be something different about our demeanor, something different about our actions that makes them think, whatever that guy's got, I want a little bit of it. And that gives us the platform of saying, Jesus is what I've got that can make it right. And again, and never be self-righteous in the way that we think we have it all together, because we don't. None of us do. Absolutely. So we also, another point would be to be willing to sacrifice and not conform. You might have to think about that, because even when I wrote it down, it sounded a little odd. Be willing to sacrifice and not conform. A big pivotal moment in my faith, I had a person that was buying a lot of printing. This printing, the amount of printing he was buying, really, it was over six figures. That was profit in my wife and I's pocket. And he was living in a way that did not fit biblically, but I had formed a really good relationship with him, but I knew the question would come one day. I knew the question would come, and I knew the answer that I had to give. And because we're called to, God loves us. He hates the sin, right? We're called to love that same way. We don't have to like the sin. We better love the sinner the way he loves us. And again, I had kind of rehearsed what I was going to say when it came up, and it finally did. And the bottom line was, my answer was, Doug, there's no greater sinner in this room than I am. But yes, if you're asking me, does this align with my beliefs? No, it does not. Less than a month later, 100% of that business was gone. And but God has been so faithful in that decision, and watching God work and be so faithful to me, just loving on Doug, but being willing to sacrifice the money and not conform and not being self-righteous, not saying that I was better than him, because I'm not. Not saying that he sinned more than I do, but I just say, I mess it up so many times, but when I want to know the difference between right and wrong, I know the book I need to go to. And while I don't get it right, I know that book is 100% foolproof if I can follow that. So I just want to go there and take all my worries and my cares, not only just put them on his shoulders, but look for that guidance and follow it to the very best of my ability. Another question is, and I've been guilty of this, especially in my early 20s when I was, like I already told you, I was so broke that I had a little Datsun 280ZX. Remember those little hot little cars? Man, when I got, it was really cool in college at Sam Houston with that thing, and but when I got up to Dallas in '86, the summer of '86, we were in the midst of an atrocious summer. And I had a radiator leak that I couldn't afford to fix. My air conditioner was broke. I'd go out on sales calls and and that was in the days we absolutely had to wear a suit and tie. Everywhere we went, it didn't matter how hot it was, very much a Ross Perot type of approach. So I would have to show up to appointments. I am not kidding you, 20, 30 minutes before, I'd go in and sit on the commode because there was air conditioner in there and just try to cool off and take my handkerchief and try to not look. I'm full-blooded German, so my face gets bright red in the sun. And so I would just try to cool off so I wouldn't look so desperate and homeless when I went in and tried to sell something. That is an absolute true story. Oh my gosh. That thing would overheat between every stop. I had to stop and put more water in the radiator, because I couldn't afford coolant either, but it didn't matter. It was leaking out so fast, it didn't matter if it was coolant or water. But I used to pray for financial things and success that a prosperity gospel would tell you is the way that we should pray. Well, I'm here to tell you, I believe there is a prosperity gospel, but it has nothing to do with money. I have never been richer than times like that story with Doug that I told you, where I lost $100,000, but I knew I had made the right decision, and I watched God work other things out just to make sure the necessities were going to happen. He does not promise us a rose garden through our life, and we do not know why some people have to go through such tragic and horrible things that we were even just talking about. But as we travel that journey, walking hand in hand with Him, we have a deep-seated joy about us that goes back to that, what I was saying about looking different. Well, that doesn't just look different. I lost my father 7 years ago, and we were so incredibly close. And I just, he had a great life. The last 18 months were really, really difficult. He was in the hospital most of the time, and he was ready to go. And I just loved that journey with him. I wouldn't have traded. He felt like a burden, and it was difficult. It was tragically difficult. But because of our faith, you can smile and laugh, and during some of the most awkward times, like I'm bathing my father in the hospital room, and we just start dying laughing together, and this was probably 3 weeks before he had passed. And we knew what was about to happen, but I just don't think you can do that without the faith that we have in this room, right? How can you? It just turns to desperation as opposed to, yeah, Dad, you're about to go home, but I'm going to be there in the blink of an eye, So my question is this: do you pray for deals to close, or do you pray for God's will? Again, so far I've messed this up, but I would say for quite a while now I truly pray for God's will. And there are so many riches that come along with knowing that you're walking hand in hand with them, aside from money and financial things. Now, the next point is, I tell you, it's hard to watch our great country be so divided. I think we as a country have just gotten angry, and we need to get rid of the anger. And as Christians, we have to be an example of getting rid of the anger, because we should be able to talk across the aisle and have debate and come to a point of meeting the greater good, as opposed to this being right and this or this right, and nothing in between seems like it is worthwhile or worth working toward. This does not mean be wimpy. Jesus went into the temple and turned a bunch of tables upside down when they were using it for a marketplace. This does not, so there is a time for an appropriate anger. But what I'm talking about is so many times we should be the example to good debate, never waver in our faith, and just being willing to compromise more for the greater good. In our own little things that we do, whether it be on the small platform that we get at like places like Deep Roots or Barnhill, or it could be at Walmart on those frustrating days. It could be that guy that just cut you off on 249, and then you end up at the same place at the Christian Business Luncheon together. Right? There's some embarrassing times like that, right? But we do. We just need to free ourselves of the anger. And the next time somebody cuts you off, just ease off the gas. And man, I don't do that well all the time. I don't, but I'm trying to do it better and better. And I'd say this is a little bit pointed, and it might not sit well with absolutely all of you, but I will say this. You don't have to love your president, but respect the office. Respect the office of the presidency. I get so disturbed by looking at social media and seeing the anger coming. Now, I'm really upset about a lot of things. I'm a very conservative guy, so that lets you know where I'm at. But we need to pray for our current president. We need to pray hard. And we needed to pray for Donald Trump. We need to pray for all of our future political leaders, because I can tell you one, I would never put my family in the midst of that chaos that is going on now in our political world. I have great esteem for those that do and can do it. And they will have my prayers no matter which side of the aisle they sit on, because we need to restore the ability to communicate politically, because our nation is in a mess. I actually said to my daughter, I still think we live in the greatest country in the free world, but I mentioned to my daughter, you know, it's feasible in your lifetime that you might go to another country to find a better way. And as my great-great-grandmother did coming from Germany, in a little place in between Brenham and Navasota called Washington on the Brazos, where the Texas Declaration, that's where I grew up going to church. German was still spoken there on sermons till 50s, and then it was also spoken when they were in the 60s. When I was running around, the only time they spoke German is when they didn't want you to understand what they were saying about you, and they did that often with me. But we need to get back to a place that is free from anger, working together for the greater good. Last thing I'll leave you with is this. Being available to those nudges that I've mentioned to them, that I mentioned to you, and saute yourself in them before acting most of the time. Now, sometimes I'll get the nudge if I see somebody that just looks like they're having a hard time, or they might be looking for extra change in their pocket to cover a bill at the grocery store. I have a great desire when I see somebody that's obviously a veteran buying their meal or something like that, because we've been fortunate we can do that. Or those little things, those are nudges you can act on quick. But much like the first winery that we started, Barnhill, I prayed over and over and over and over again. I sauteed in that to a point that I felt like I had removed selfish motivation from my prayer. because that's when God really can talk to you, is if you can remove selfish motivation from your prayer, truly looking for His will in those circumstances. And once you're comfortable with that, if you know that you've removed selfish motivation and you're still feeling prompted, then you know God has spoken to you. No doubt. God would not put a selfish motive in your heart. The other guy does that. And we listen to him fairly often too. So live fully, because you were designed to live fully. Love with reckless abandon your neighbor, your wife, your children, your customers, those you don't even know. When you do this, you will succeed, maybe in ways you never have even imagined, but He imagined for you. God bless you guys. Oh, yeah, some. Absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions for me?
You can ask wine questions too. I'm all game for that.
What's coming up this weekend, band-wise?
Golly, I should know these things, right? Oh, well, ever since we started the second venue, I cannot keep it straight. But I tell you, one thing you could do. Yeah. Johnetta, you told me you were the smartest one here, and you're right. Event, view all upcoming event on Eventbrite. Look, she knows what she's talking about. Okay. Okay, every Saturday and Sunday we're open from 12 to 5. We call that country sipping, okay? And we have, Bubba is our chef, and Bubba is a guy I met, a Plantersville boy, and Bubba is really Bubba, and so we call it Bubba's Kitchen in the Vineyard. That's like an oxymoron, right? But so his kitchen is open. We have a Kenny Chesney band, cover band coming from Dallas area. If you like Kenny Chesney, you will love this band. They're awesome. And then the 25th, we have a Def Leppard tribute band called History. They're out of Houston. And then Saturday, we have 3 July 4th events, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Saturday is the skate band covering Journey. All 3 of these events are going to have fireworks, and we like to say, nothing professional, but imagine your crazy uncle spending his last month's paychecks on firework. A heck of a lot of fun, and it really is. It's pretty remarkable what you can get for that amount of money and make it just mind-blowing. And then Sunday, July 3rd, is a Garth Brooks. Adam Grant, he flies in from Nashville for that. His band's from this area, but he's a Nashville artist under Adam Grant, but covers Garth Brooks for us. And then, oh my gosh, I don't see it on. July 4th is actually my band, an Eagles cover band called Fastlane, and it's not on there. I got to see why that's not on there. But then you see Leonard Skinner down there. You get the idea. But anyway, we would love to see you come out there either for country sipping, or we do sipping shops. We had a sipping shop event last Sunday, so we do that once a month. And so we just love for you to come out and enjoy. Like I said, we do have some fantastic wines. It doesn't matter if you like sweet, dry. We even have one called a silky chocolate that is just almost like a Tootsie Roll standing up in the middle of a ruby cab. That's too sweet for me, but I like to say, or would tell people it's too sweet for me, but I love this wine. How would that make sense? Because it sells more than any other wine here, and I own this place, and so you love that sweet wine, even if I don't particularly care for it. But anyway, so any other questions? You can find us on Facebook or Instagram, and it would help us tremendously because you cannot see our place from the road. The only way people know is by this organic thing through Facebook. So if you follow us, you would do my heart great because that helps get that out there to the next level. And if you share our events that you see pop up once you do follow us, Have any of you seen any advertisement through Facebook? Because we do saturate this area. You have? Okay. But if you share that, it helps us exponentially, and we'd be very grateful for it. On the sip and shop or country sipping, no, you can just show up, but the events are ticketed events, and so they're most time $19, and you get the tickets just by clicking right on top of one of these guys, and it'll take you right there to it. But they generally, we're an early venue because I think there's a lot of people like me that they get grumpy at about 10 o'clock, and so we shut this thing down about 10:15, and everybody gets home at a good, reasonable hour so we can all get up and go to church Sunday morning.
Do you serve food?
Yes, sir. Bubba's Kitchen at the Vineyard. Yeah, we do. He does a thing called a ribeye roll-up that's a thin ribeye wrapped around asparagus, Parmesan cheese, and thick-cut peppered bacon that we actually say it slap your mama good. But we do wood-fired pizzas and charcuterie boards and grilled chicken Caesar salad. We have a small menu because when 300 people show up at one time want to eat, you better have that thing figured out how you're going to get them out of there real quick. Anything else? It's been an honor to be here. God bless you guys.